philosophers call them faculties in your soul. One of them is your intellect, which you're using to follow this lecture, for example. Another one is your will, which you use to make choices. And another one is your affections, or your power of having feelings, your whole affective sphere. And, if there were a dog or a cat in here hearing me, it could never ask me a question after this lecture, because it doesn't have an intellect in the sense of a personal intellect. Okay? In the sphere of your will, we can make all sorts of decisions, like to stand up and leave the room or come back. But in the realm of decision making, you could say, in the natural world, the highest, most important decisions are moral decisions. Moral decisions. Like we were talking about before, if you choose to tell a lie, you're going to eventually become a dishonest person. And if you choose to tell the truth, you become an honest person. Have honesty kind of as a lasting attitude and characteristic of your soul. And animals also don't have that participation. They don't become morally evil. If you say that's a bad dog, it's not because he's full of hatred or something. So we have a will. We have a will. And then with our affective sphere, we can, for example, be moved by a particularly beautiful sunset. Or we can love the people that we love. In here, too, we see a difference in kind between animals and persons. And maybe this particular story is getting old, but I don't know if any of you saw this movie, Peter Jackson's remake of King Kong. But in that movie, King Kong, twice during the movie, he's looking at a sunset, and he gets moved by it. You could see it in his facial expression. And the girl that he took off that thing in the woods with him, she's like, yeah, beauty. Now, I don't know if animal rights activists were involved in making this movie, but I want to make a philosophical point from that, on the assumption that they were. If they were, then, because the idea of the animal rights activist is to make it, and by the way, animals are great, and you can't kick them either, like you can either, because they could feel pain, but it's a different reason. But if animal rights activists made that movie, it proves the point actually that we're making here, because it's founded on the assumption that it is true that any being who has a rational nature has lofty worth. So by giving King Kong the ability to feel a sunset and then make him look like he does, what does that do in the audience? It raises your view of his worth, because of the true foundational idea that any being who can do that has lofty worth. So, okay. Anyways, so this is one source of the worth of persons that gives them profound worth. And the idea, why did I put this within the context of the upright posture, is because many thinkers, even from ancient times and medieval times, have noticed that animals, they're crawling around, most of them with their nose in the ground and their teeth are out in front of their eyes. But we have this upright posture with our eyes up here. And the idea of a rational nature that I just described is that it allows persons to transcend themselves meaningfully to the whole universe. Because we have an intellect, a will, and affections, we can deeply, meaningfully relate to truth, beauty, goodness, other people. And that is reflected in our very body, that we stand up like this and kind of have our view to the whole world, which our faculties allow us to transcend to. So some thinkers have noted that this rational nature is expressed in our very posture. That's another way in which our soul is deeply united with our body. Okay. Now the fourth one I have on the sheet there is human expression. This one I think is even deeper than the ones we've been talking about so far. John Paul II once said that he saw the meaning of Mother Teresa in her eyes. He saw the meaning of Mother Teresa in her eyes. And I remember this story from one of the professors I mentioned earlier, Joseph Seifert. He told a story about his grandfather, I think, had Alzheimer's disease during World War II, and they lived in Austria, and he had no clue who Adolf Hitler was. And they were having dinner once in a restaurant, and there was a framed picture of him up there. And the grandfather was just sitting there eating, and he was kind of gazing at this picture, and then at one point he just blurted out the words, "a vulgar visage." But he had no clue who it was. Okay, the point, so John Paul with the eyes of Mother Teresa and that story, the point I want to make here is this. Is it not utterly amazing that the posture, the tone of voice, the look in someone's eye, all physical features, get to be that way because of what we think, feel, and decide, all invisible things? The posture of somebody, the look in their eye, their expression, their tone of voice, those are physical things. But how do they get that way? Because of what we think, feel, and decide, because of these spiritual realities. That's a stunning way to the traditional way of saying the soul is the form of the body. It animates the body. It gives it life. That's true. But we can add to it. The soul is the form of the body in the sense that our spiritual acts form our physical expressions. The soul is the form of the body in the sense that our spiritual acts form our physical expressions. That's quite amazing. It's quite amazing. This idea of human expression, there's a part 2 on this one before we get to the next point, also is what makes possible empathy. What makes possible empathy. Empathy is, and St. Edith Stein wrote a whole book about empathy. Very perceptive analysis of empathy. And empathy is a very complex topic, but briefly, it's the ability to feel with your feelings the feelings of another person. It's not when someone else is having a feeling, it's not you remembering your similar feeling from a similar, that would be thinking about yourself, not them. It's really it's a feeling knowing of the feelings of another person. And the first step of empathy is to accurately grasp a physical expression in another person. Accurately grasp a physical expression in another person. And our feelings are so present in our body that that's why empathy is possible. That's why empathy is possible. Now, this does not mean, here's 2 things I'm not saying. It doesn't mean that every time you look at someone, you know their whole soul and all their secrets. It doesn't mean that. It also, what I'm not saying, because there's dimensions of your intimate life which are hidden and you have to share them in other ways. And the other thing I'm not saying is you can't be tricked. Some people are good at hiding their emotions from their facial expressions. But what I am saying is that when empathy happens correctly, this is how it happens. You know, maybe you could think of an experience, like maybe it works better with people you know very well, but maybe you see somebody you know and they look happy and they're doing a happy expression, and then it could be just something like a little quiver in their lip. And suddenly you're rushed with the awareness, they're sad. That's a case of empathy. How can a quiver in a lip cause all of that? It's because your soul is right present in your body immediately. Your feelings, that's why the Pope says you are your body. Because you almost want to say, okay, your face is happy. Really, your face is teeth and so forth. But the happiness is somehow spiritually present in the physical reality. Okay. The 5th way of trying to express the closeness of our soul to their body that I have on the sheet there is each person's uniqueness. What I said already, and this relates to the dignity of persons, So far I said the reason people have dignity is because they have a rational nature, and that's true. But this is another reason why people have dignity, another reason which, once you understand it, your moral awareness of the respect due to others widens and deepens. And that is that each one is utterly unique and irreplaceable. Okay? Now the way to understand this is to ponder somebody you love. Ponder their face. And then ask yourself the question, why you love this person? What is it about this person that makes you love them? And sometimes I ask my students to try to answer that. And they say, it's the way they walk, I think, or the way they laugh, something like that. Now, in one sense, you can love a laugh or a walk, but strictly speaking, laughter and laughter are not the proper objects of your love. What you love is a person who is expressed in a laugh or in the walk. The person who's laughing is expressed in it. And this is another amazing thing, that somehow the utter uniqueness of a person gets expressed in their laugh. Maybe that's why each laugh is unique. But you do perceive quite directly the utter uniqueness of someone in their laugh. And it's because this uniqueness impresses itself, as it were, on their body and on their physical actions. Now, this uniqueness of persons, even though it's so close to the physical body and forms a unity with it, is an immaterial reality. And it's, you could say, the foundation of love. There's all different sorts of love. Spousal love is the one we're talking about at this conference, but there's parent-child love and friendship love and sibling love. And all of these types of loves, even though they have differences in their essential structure, they have a common kind of starting point, which is you catching a glimpse of the uniqueness of this person. That's what inspires the love. It's not the fact that they have an intellect. That's what I sometimes say. If you meet a new person or fall in love, you don't go to your other friends and say, guess what? I met another functioning intellect today. You meet a person who's expressed to you in an intellect and in a will and so forth. Now this uniqueness, by the way, a little quick point also to maybe get at it. It takes more to fully bring it out. But one thing that's interesting is you're unique, you're unique, you're unique, you're unique. Everybody's unique. So it seems like, well, then uniqueness isn't unique because everybody's unique. But the way to fix that little problem is to say that there's a distinction between the fact of uniqueness, which everybody has, but then there's the very content of you. That which, when your mother looks at you, she sees, and that's what makes her love you so much. There's a fullness of your essential content, okay, which is what the people see when they love you. And why do the students say, oh, it's the way they laugh or walk? It's because there's no words that can capture that. This is an interesting point too, a philosophical point. There are things in the universe which you know very deeply and you love, but there are no words that could ever capture them. And the uniqueness of another person is one of those things. My friend Maria Federica, who writes about these topics, said maybe there's one word that kind of does it. Their name, like when we say, oh, that's so John. If somebody knows John, then they're like, oh yeah. But there's no words that you can. But the mere fact that there are no words to express adequately some realities in the universe does not give you a reason to think you don't know and love that reality. It's just one of the things that there's no words for. You do know it, and you do. And the uniqueness of a person is the best example of that. And that's deeply impressed in our bodies. Okay, so now to these two stories. If I'm on the last part, so and this will be quick. I wanted to do that to give you an experience a little bit of some of the phenomenology that John Paul himself was very familiar with, and to show this anthropology kind of in an experiential way, the closeness of our spiritual dimension to our body. Now, if and one of the points, so this is just kind of one way to express an answer to this question. Why? There's this question out there that says it's very clear and easy to understand that a willful act to use artificial birth control blocks procreation from happening. blocks the sperm from meeting an egg. And it's even deeper than that, because God, in the creation of a new human person, wants to be immediately present. Because he loves that person, he's going to bring their immortal soul into existence. So you're also being irreverent towards God with that act. That's a good argument against artificial birth control. But what John Paul II is saying, and why he's trying to answer this question from the beginning of what I said, he's saying that artificial birth control also blocks the unitive dimension. Artificial birth control doesn't just block procreation. It introduces necessarily an element of selfishness into the love, which will damage it greatly and eventually destroy it. But it's harder to understand that one. It's easy to say, okay, sperm, egg, block them. How does that blocking hurt love? That's an interesting question. And that is one of the things that John Paul II is trying to express. And here's just one way, and maybe some of the other speakers will draw this out more in other ways. But imagine two men relating to their wives, okay? And the thing you have to do for this is to understand, think about, now try to just ponder everything we just said about the spiritual unity of body and soul. And notice something about fertility, and in particular fertility in women. It's much more palpably experienced in women as part of their whole integral body-soul unity because of their cycle and all of the experiences that involves. In fact, that fact could be another on my list of reasons why someone could draw that out. Maybe a woman should do that instead of me, could draw that out to show the deep unity of our body and soul. But the point is that this fertility is experienced profoundly in women as part of their whole body-soul intimate unity. So if a man understands that, he could say to his wife, I love you, and I want to understand everything about you, including your cycle. And I want us to live our marriage in